If you enjoy what you're hearing and find it valuable, like, comment, and share. Have you ever had a senior moment? Well, these days, younger and younger people are having what they call senior moments. You're trying to remember the name of a movie star or a singer. You walk into a room, and all of a sudden you don't know what you were walking in there for. This is kind of epidemic, but it's one of those things that's kind of silent and not talked about a lot. But I bet anybody watching knows a friend or a loved one who's gone through this horrifying experience of cognitive function declining, moving into dementia, and then into Alzheimer's. Well, we're going to demystify some things today, and we're going to tell you that you actually can bring your brain back, or you can go ahead and live a life to your old age, even passing on, and keep your brain healthy. We've got somebody here that is a friend to Ultra Botanica, and of course, Adam Payne's going to be making a cameo appearance here and some other segments with Keith Bishop. But Keith Bishop, retired pharmacist, clinical nutritionist, you've been studying cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, dementia, 20 years plus. And by the way, welcome to Ultra Live today.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. So yes, family history. And so my father had early onset Alzheimer's due in part to his cancer treatment. And so prostate cancer, they gave him chemicals to shut down his hormones. That, along with other lifestyle and a few genetic issues, some things that he did, as a younger person that probably weren't great in his lifestyle, and early onset dementia. He had uncles that had dementia that were 20 years at least older than he that had it at the same time. They didn't develop it early like he did. So I started studying and apply that into my life. My wife, her mother had dementia, and my wife has inherited a marker for that. And so I'm studying and applying those things, for myself, my wife, and clients.
So I was watching an interview with an absolutely fascinating guy. His last name is Holford. He's written an amazing book, has a really cool website where you can take tests to find out where your brain is at, and then some really cool things to help a person progress with simple steps into optimum brain health. Mm-hmm. The thing that blew me away is where he came right out of the chute, Keith, and he said, memory loss, anxiety disorders, depression, sleep deprivation. He threw all these things out, and I had never made an association with depression, things like that, and being tied into this idea of cognitive decline. So what are some of these key problems that are actually markers that someone may look for along the way that is actually experiencing cognitive decline?
It has to all do about kind of like nutrition for the brain. And so if you're lacking, we'll talk about nutrients, the B vitamins and proteins and minerals, and imbalance creates improper function. And sometimes it will just start off with some depression. I'm not too concerned about that occasional word loss.
Right.
I remember the word I put the keys.
So that happens to almost everybody, yeah?
I hope.
Occasionally? Okay.
and so it does happen, but it's been known actually for a long time about depression and anxiety. And
I don't know how I missed that one, but I did.
It's been known for a very long time. And so that's one of those things that with my clients, I'm always watching, looking at their intake. I've got clients I've had for over 30 years and following them and watching that and seeing some of that happen. It's not always the case because there's many, many factors. But yes, definitely depression especially can be one of those factors. But we have to kind of consider, why did that person have depression? The underlying things are what the problem really is. It's not the depression's the problem. It's the underlying causes.
So you really are saying there's potentially common threads running through this that are indicators with people as they are walking through life that you could kind of go, we ought to do a brain test on you. We ought to check you out. Let's look at how you're eating, supplementing, all that, and we're going to get into that a little later. It's going to be a lot of fun. So another thing that occurred to me, do you think that this is tied to that whole idea of We've moved away from an agrarian lifestyle, working hard on the farm, on the ranch, raising vegetables, good soil and stuff like that. Is this a recent problem? I mean, are we talking about in the last century? And the thing that surprised me that I was learning the last week as I was boning up for our time together was it's not just happening in 80-year-olds and 90-year-olds. It's like dropping down to 60, and people are beginning to experience in their 50s and even 40s.
Right.
So is it a new thing, or is it an old thing that we just didn't identify hundreds of years ago?
Well, I think there's always been. I remember a great-grandmother with dementia when I was a child.
Okay.
And so she was probably in her 80s. I have a few other relatives like that, that were in their 80s. And so it's always been around. If we live long enough, those odds are going to increase. And part of that has to do with circulation. Mm-hmm. The brain has to have blood supply to provide those nutrients. And as we're getting older, we have a tendency to get more plaque, atherosclerosis, build up, decreased circulation. The brain is going to start kind of starving out and not functioning right, and or injury. Various different things that can literally injure the brain. So I think it is happening earlier. I have had more clients the past 5 years, or say 10 years, definitely an earlier, like 40-year-olds with definite problems and a very aggressive type dementia, Alzheimer's type issue. I'm seeing that. I haven't evaluated the statistics on that, but also the population is getting older. So therefore, we're seeing a larger number of people too.
I know we're going to cover this later in the supplementation part, but I have to bring up this guy named Hugh Sinclair. This guy was actually studying cardiology. I believe he's a Cambridge guy, and very preeminent. I think he was actually in the pharmacology department there at Cambridge. And he was studying about cardiovascular issues and heart health. And he's the guy that really kind of pioneered the idea after going and spending several weeks or months with the Inuit Eskimos. And they're eating all this seal meat, mm-hmm. and having high amounts of seal oil. And he thought, I wonder if this can be duplicated. And so when he went back to Cambridge, he literally imported a whole bunch of seal meat and seal oil and started doing self-tests and tests among the people there. And they were measuring and going, wow, we've discovered this incredible link with cardiovascular health and heart health and omega-3s, mm-hmm. DHA primarily. Mm-hmm. And I just thought it was just an intriguing thing because you mentioned the lack of nutrients as we age due to bad heart health. But we're going to discover later on that this omega-3, it's just not for heart health. It's right. The brain health thing, or at least one of the components that needs to be used. Mm-hmm. So that's really cool. Any comment on that? Did you make that discovery at some point in time as well about this whole connection between omegas, which, we've all been supposedly taking them for years for our heart, and it's like we're getting a bonus effect, aren't we?
Yes, that's right. Well, the omega-3 fatty acids, matter of fact, the EPA and DHA that are inside the cells make up 2 of the 5 fatty acids that make up the cell wall of every cell in the body. The brain is primarily fat. And mm-hmm. so EPA and DHA are 2 of those fats. The primary best fat of that is DHA. And so those 2 fats are real soft and flexible, and they help the brain cells, the neurons, to be soft and flexible, and that allows neurotransmitters to attach better, allows other things, the brain, the chemical transmitters and minerals to go in and out and attach better. So those fats, especially DHA, are the primary fats for the brain. So
is cognitive function much more a Western thing? Is it less prevalent around the world? Or do we just see people that are relying on fast food and have the same environmental toxins we're exposed to, lack of exercise? Does it hit anybody pretty much that's just not taking care of themselves?
It definitely, in the Western world, we have a tendency to be not active enough and have the wrong food combinations, not sleep right. We're going to talk about all kinds of things that are going to be risk factors for that. And so, we have a tendency to not have the right type of foods and activities. compared to other societies that are more physically active. The more active we are, the more blood supply we have pumping through the body and including the brain. So it's a combination of things. I think it is more of a Western world, but also there's the other factors too, and it has to do also with bad foods and fats, bad things that we have a tendency to do here, fast foods.
So I had a good friend throw out a word to me, executive function, and honestly, I didn't know what that was. But I learned that it's something that we acquire as we grow, and it's the ability to organize thoughts, to plan, to set goals, to be able to carry out things, even with interruptions from other people. How's executive function play into this idea of cognitive decline?
Well, and so that's the good part, the executive function, being able to put all those pieces together and list and stay focused despite everything that's going on around. Mm-hmm. And so with cognitive impairment, we start seeing just little tiny things start slipping, and they're not able to list something or keep track of something and follow through. So some tests, simple tests, include that type of evaluation. Okay, they'll give you directions on to do something, to say something, to remember something, and then you have to come back and repeat that and write it down and draw that drawing and such. That is a sign of those problems.
I think what you just said is important for our viewers to, especially if they're married, because when you were talking just then, I thought, I bet spouses are the ones that can really begin to see the sign in another spouse of those types of things. And I would just encourage people to not ignore that,
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because again, today we're going to demystify some things. When I saw a recent friend's father go through that and ultimately passed away over the last 4 years, and it was so fast. It just happened so fast. I kind of, for the first time in my life, thought, oh my gosh, what would it be like if I experienced cognitive decline? I was so delighted as I began to study to realize there's really good roadmaps, isn't there? I mean, I want our viewers to be filled with hope.
Yes.
It's not rocket
Definitely.
science to be able to keep your brain healthy into old age, is it?
That's right. And it does take somebody to help. And so the people that I don't see get better are ones that don't have that partnership.
They need the support
They
system?
need the support.
Wow.
And if it's a person by themselves, it's not going to happen. They don't have that ability to keep track of everything.
Right.
What they're
Makes
eating,
sense.
and they're supposed to be eating, what they're supposed to be exercising and drinking and such. So without that partner, it's not going to work. But then also being a close partner has a tendency, things are so kind of like slowly progressing, they may not recognize that sometimes, and they may even enable it a little bit, like, oh well, they just kind of forget how to turn or how to get this and do that, and so a lot of times it can go for quite some time without a close partner, recognizing it sometimes.
See, I'm hearing an underlying theme that you're saying, which is you're preaching prevention,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Not a better time to start than right now,
Exactly.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What's myelination? What's that have to do with this cognitive decline?
Myelination is the covering around the myelin sheath around the nerves in the brain, and it's kind of like a protective barrier in a way, but it's not like a armored barrier, but it's soft and flexible, but it is protective, and the goal of that is to help keep bad things from happening to it. And it's kind of like a slave, or shirts on. There's kind of like a protective barrier. I needed that, when I was working with the animals the other day. So if we lose that allows more damage to be done to the nerves and the brain cells.
And other than genetics, as it relates to myelination, are we once again talking about simple things like exercise, supplementation, and diet that actually keep a strong myelin sheath?
Overall, yes. Now, there can be a few exceptions, including some autoimmune diseases.
Right.
And so like MS,
Yep.
Classic, the immune system for some reason is attacking that protective barrier, that lining. So there can be some autoimmune things, but that comes back to a lot of overall health and gut health and immune balance.
So tell me what brain remodeling is and how one can apply something like that to have a tool in their toolbox.
Yeah, remodeling, very broad term, but the goal is to, I call it like training. Our brain has an ability to relearn and shift. So I know one young child, and a birth defect. He has half of his brain. Have no idea. I mean, he's not ideal, but you have no idea. He's actually pretty high functioning, more like in an autistic type, syndrome issue. But he's doing very well. People that have a stroke, they can adapt and relearn those abilities, those physical and mental abilities to a certain extent. Now, sometimes some of those cells, if they die out, some of those may not, if they didn't get to transfer that ability to another cell, they may not have that transferring and training.
That is a fascinating subject. I only learned about 10 years ago this whole idea about these furrows in your brain and being able to learn new habits, especially among people that have addictions and things like that, and being able to relearn new behaviors. And then those areas where those thoughts constantly used to run down, they're no longer available. And these new ideas and new thoughts and new habits are there and prominent.
It's like
in the
muscle,
brain. It's very
muscle
cool.
training.
Yeah.
So I play trumpet, and so the brain, the lips, the fingers have to learn that, and you have to go over it and over it and over it again. You can master it. And so same thing with brain function and memory. There are certain types of exercises you can do to improve brain function.
Good. Well, now I can tell my wife that my son and I playing guitars loud is a very important part of us keeping our cognitive function. Movement and balance. What do movement and balance have to do with our brain?
Well, of course, the brain, nervous system, I kind of think of it as the computer part of the body. It helps the body it sends the signals down to the muscles, and then the muscles reply and have sensation and feeling and send signals back. It's part of that training and exercise. And so there's this feedback continuously going on. So the more physically active you are, the better your brain function typically is going to be also. And then we've got the physical blood supply. And so the physical exercise, and how when we sweat, we get hot and get red, that redness is dilated blood vessels, improved blood supply to the brain. We have to have that. So matter of fact, the whole body benefits from it. So everything from the brain to the heart, to the kidneys, to your pinky toe, we have to have good circulation. Otherwise, cells start dysfunctioning and or dying.
No doubt, cold plunges and infrared sauna and all these things that people are really into these days play a huge role in being able to
those.
Vasodilate and get the capillaries shooting blood out. We do notice I've noticed as people get older, their gait changes, their walking changes. Is that something also that's an indicator that as you're watching someone age, maybe a spouse is watching, their husband or their wife age, and all of a sudden they see the gait changing? Is that kind of an indicator to look forward to and maybe test the brain?
Definitely. So there are even special tests for that are geared for that to evaluate brain function, they don't tell you that they're doing that, but they'll say, would you walk across the office or across the exam room? And the doctors are evaluating and timing you, on how you do that and your gait, and they're making notes, about that. And so, yes, so that's part of the once again, the brain's telling the extremities to do different things. If we start losing some of those abilities in the brain, so matter of fact, the brain's not just memory. It's everything about the body. Physical function, activity, brain, memory, hearing. Hearing losses can be an issue.
Seeing. I learned something profound about that. We'll talk about that later.
These are attached right to the brain.
Yeah.
And all this stuff. So, tinnitus, the ears are directly related and hooked up to the brain. And if there's a problem with that, that's just another sign something's not right. Have to evaluate that. So yes, so that gait is part of it. Certain types of dementias, like Parkinson's, is more of a dopamine muscle control, and that's a definite walking issue.
Perfect. Hey, your you're watching Ultra Life today, would you like to contact Keith Bishop? It's easy to do. He also has another specialty. He coaches a lot of people that are dealing with an active cancer journey as well. You can get in touch with him, prevailovercancer.com. Another website you can reach out to Keith is Flourish, FLOURISH, RX.com. This is Ultra Life Today.